Hey there. Are you wrestling with disappointment? Do you wonder what I mean by wrestling with disappointment? Well, I'm Danielle Burnock from DanielleBurnock.com. Love yourself from Survive to Thrive, that lady on the internet who loves you. And this word wrestling became in the front of my mind this morning in my quiet time. That word wrestle was there and I'd heard it before. It's in the Bible and I'm doing this devotional and she talked about wrestling well. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I thought of wrestling, like the sport. Wrestling. I don't care to watch wrestling. Some people love watching wrestling. But I started just really thinking about wrestling in the context of what this lady was saying. And what is wrestling? It's not just, two people rolling around on a mat. And how I thought about it in wrestling, like the Bible says, we wrestle not with flesh and blood, blah, 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 blah. I always thought real small about it, I found out. I thought it's just like thinking about it or, struggling a little bit. But I looked up the word wrestling in the dictionary. I learned so much by looking things up in the dictionary because the English language is very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's full. It has a lot, which makes it very complicated. I mean, spelling, I'll get off on the wrong tangent if I really go into that. English can be very difficult because the spelling is not consistent across everything. Definitions can sometimes mean the opposite, so you have to look at them in context. So I looked up that word, wrestling. And it means so much more than what I thought. It led me to another word, grappling. And I discovered that grappling is actually like a sport also, just like wrestling. I had no idea. So I'm like, well, what's the difference? Wow. It was really profound when I thought about how this can be translated into our lives in a mental way, in an emotional way, in a spiritual way, when we wrestle with things and when we grapple with things and when the enemy of our soul wrestles with us or the spirits of darkness wrestle with us or grapple with us. And those were things I didn't really see in a way I could imagine so that I could respond with intention. That's why I wanted to share this with you, to empower you. So when you feel these things, when you have this wrestling going on, this grappling going on, that you can respond with intention. But I said disappointment because disappointment tends to be one of the biggest things that we wrestle with and grapple with in a way that went with these definitions. So let me read these definitions. I got a paper here. To wrestle means to contend by grappling. I'm like, great, now you're using words I need to look up. To contend by grappling with and striving to trip or throw an opponent down or off balance. So here you're walking along through life, everything's going just fine, and this disappointment pulls a rug out from underneath you, and you are not balanced anymore. Another definition is to combat an opposing tendency or force wrestling with your conscience. That the force was the word that stuck out to me there. To engage in or as if in a violent or determined struggle. That's a lot more intense than my original thought process of wrestling with something or struggling with something or, grappling with something. Maybe that was a little bit more intense. But then the last definition I have for wrestling is to move, maneuver, or force with difficulty. Man, think about disappointment. That's a big difficulty in our soul because disappointment is horribly painful. The bigger the disappointment, the more intense the pain. But before I get back into that, I want to go one more definition of grappling. How is grappling different? Well, if you grapple with someone, you take hold of them and struggle with them as part of a fight. The big thing with that, with me, was the taking hold of part. And that's where the whole disappointment kind of thing came in with grappling and wrestling with disappointment. Because when we get disappointed, it hurts our soul. We hurt on the inside. We hurt in our mind. We hurt in our emotions. We hurt inside. And what do we do when we have a sore? Like if you have a sore on your arm or you cut yourself or something, what is our natural tendency? It's to look at it. It's to pay attention to it, to focus on it. Well, we do that till we take care of it, and then we hopefully put stuff on so it doesn't hurt. But when it constantly hurts, we constantly pay attention to it. It takes our focus off of other things. So when we have disappointment going on inside of us, when we're wrestling with that disappointment, we're grappling with that disappointment, it wants to grab a hold of us and make us be stuck in that disappointment, be stuck in that pain. But we don't have to. We can wrestle well, like that lady was talking about in my devotion. We can learn to wrestle well. It takes training and it takes us work, inside work. Well, that's what I'm about, is inside work, right? So we can go from survive to thrive. If we survive a disappointment, a lot of times we stay stuck in it. It's behind us, but it's still affecting us. But to thrive, that is to go past it. We have to choose to not get stuck. We recognize it. We feel the pain. We deal with it, but then we lift up our eyes. Lift up our eyes and know that life is bigger than that one thing. It feels like it's the only thing. Just like when you have a wound on your arm. And sometimes if you have a big pain, that's all you focus on. And it takes work and it takes help. It takes support. Sometimes it takes a lot of things. But we can get a lot of things. We can get a lot of support. We can get help. You can reach for help. If you have a huge disappointment in your soul and you need help, reach for help. If you hurt your body, you'd go to the doctor. If your soul is hurting, get help. You can reach out for counseling. You can reach out for a friend. You can call a friend. You can call me. I have a way to do that on my website. You can pray. Ask God for help. He's right there, wants to help you. He said, call unto me and I will be there. He will help you. Sometimes we have a hard time hearing, though, because we're so tuned into the pain. So we have to find a way to quiet ourselves. Maybe go for a walk or go for a bike ride or listen to some music. Or if you can quiet yourself, sometimes it doesn't work because there's too much noise. So that's why I mentioned the music and going for a walk. But we have to calm ourselves. There's a movie I saw years ago, and this young girl was flailing in her emotional freak out. And her caregiver held her while this little girl was beating on her, freaking out. She held her until she expended all that energy and then relaxed. And if we will push through to do that, we can get past the disappointment. We can lift our eyes and say, God, what can I do in this? What can you do in this? Because he can. Maybe he's already got something in there. Maybe he's already got something on the other side, because God is not surprised by our disappointments. He was there before we got there. So maybe he's got a surprise on the other side. If you're like, God, what can you do with this? And give it to him. Say, this hurts. Take this pain and make something out of it. Or can I give you this pain and you give me something else in exchange? And he can do that if we will dare to ask, if we will dare to lift up our eyes and look up to God. I mean, we look up to God because it's the way we tend to do it, because God is both in heaven and he lives in our heart. If we've asked Jesus to be our God, be Lord of our life, he's right here. He says, I'll never leave you or forsake you. But it's figurative. We lift our eyes and we can also look around to, life is bigger than me, and how can I maybe help someone else? How can I find maybe something that I can do instead that maybe it's even better? Because that's how God rolls. God is interested in better for you. Because in this world, he said we will have trouble. We will have trouble. There's no way around it. Life has pain in it. But we can find joy again. We can wrestle well, and we can win. We can pin that opponent of disappointment, and we can get up and we can walk away in victory, because that's what Jesus has secured victory for us. So I know I'm going to talk about this some more, because there's so much more in this to unpack. I haven't even learned everything I want to learn, because it was just this morning where I was looking into this wrestling and grappling. Look into it yourself and see what God will teach you. So until next time, I love you.